Hello, Chris Lee here at Southeastern 16, joined by Graham Doty, Alfred Esmond, Jay Greason. We are here to react to Mississippi State's dismissal of head baseball coach Chris Lemonis. We'll talk about how attractive the job is, who the candidates might be, what might be realistic for Mississippi State, a very proud program that has fallen on some hard times. Since its national title in 2021, I don't think anybody would have predicted that State would have, I guess, not made the SEC tournament a year or two, not gotten out of a regional since. It has been a weird situation for Chris Lemonis, who was never really able to capitalize on his 2021 national championship. Let's start here, guys. And Graham, I'll start with you. You live in the state of Mississippi. Why do you think Zac Selmon made a change now? Are we surprised that Chris Lemonis was been fired in season? What I have heard is he's under a lot of pressure. There's been some football slippage. They've been through some head coaching dismissals for football. When football's not in great shape, people are generally not in a good mood. Basketball's had some success under him, but baseball, which is their bell cow program, has fallen mightily since the national title. What I've heard is Lemonis was under a lot of pressure to, I guess, going on a better side of the fan base. And I don't know why that means you got to do it with 3 weeks left in the season. I'm not saying it was good, it was bad. I'm just very curious into what the thinking is in the state of Mississippi and how Chris Lemonis' firing was received with a few weeks left in the regular season.
Lot to unpack here. Well, first of all, for Mississippi State fans, all right, I went to Ole Miss. My wife went to Mississippi State. I have a lot of family members that went to Mississippi State. And it's hard to put into words how much college baseball means to everybody in the state of Mississippi, but it's a lot. It's not football level, but it's pretty close. To answer one of your questions, was I surprised that State made a change during the season? I am. I kind of thought that they would wait until the end of the season to make a change. But having talked to people, reading articles, listening to Mississippi State podcast and all that, it seems like the game plan for Mississippi State athletic director Zac Selmon, he did not want to risk it to where, let's say, Mississippi State just out of nowhere gets insanely hot. They make the NCAA tournament, go to the super regionals, and then go back to Omaha. He didn't really want to risk that, because then if that would have happened, then you're probably looking at, you got to extend Lemonis, that kind of a thing. Even though Mississippi State made the regionals last year, they went to Charlottesville. Lemonis' contract, they didn't roll over. They didn't extend him. They just kind of let it be. So that's kind of where Mississippi State is at. So yeah, I'm surprised they did it during the middle of the season, but I'm a firm believer of, if you're an athletic director and you know that it's time, you got to rip the Band-Aid off. You can't really sit around and wait, because if you do that, and if they go on a magical run, then you're kind of stuck with Lemonis for at least 3 to 4 more years. So I understand the thought process for the athletic department for Mississippi State. So all right, let's make the change now. Let's give it the interim tag to somebody that more than likely isn't going to be the head coach. So you don't really have anything you got to worry about there. And Justin Parker's the interim head coach now. He's the pitching coach. He's in the middle of his second season there. So I guess that's kind of like the meat and potatoes of it. So they didn't want to risk it, so they just went ahead and just made the change now.
Graham, you talked to him last week before that series with Auburn. I mean, you said it was short, intense. Did he give any indication that it was just hanging, the guillotine was getting greased up?
So last week, that was my first time to talk to him ever. If anybody doesn't know, production meetings, I don't care what sport it is, when you have a production meeting with a head coach or players or whatever, you're looking at 30 minutes minimum. we did not go 30 minutes with Lemonis. Now he was nice and everything, and it was cordial, but it wasn't very long at all. And like we were kind of in and we were kind of out. So, I mean, if he knew this was coming, like, you know, he definitely wasn't going to tell us. So I have no idea for him if this was a surprise or not, or, you know, maybe he knew it was coming, but maybe he thought he had the full season. So, I mean, I don't know. And I mean, even if he did know, like, I doubt he was going to tell us in a production meeting, you know?
The daunting thing to me, guys, and probably why they did it now too. I mean, the SEC record since their national title season is pretty atrocious, right? For Mississippi State standards, when you look at it. I mean, they went 9-21 in the SEC the 2 years after their national title run. A little better after that with a 17-13 record when they had a good Hoover, went to Charlottesville, that sort of thing. But at some point, you know, you can't miss out on the tournament consecutive years and possibly do it again this year if you're Mississippi State. So, you know, a change had to come, and you know, maybe this year with Justin Parker at the helm now is kind of in the drain, so to speak. But this is as attractive of a job as ever, you know, in college baseball, with or without NIL involved into it. And there's a lot of candidates being thrown around. That's what I'm excited to talk about, because it's like almost every coach you could probably name in the sport is being thrown into this hat that they're picking through.
Yeah, the attractiveness of the job is going to be debated. I think it's an attractive job. I think one of the things that you'll hear, like, I think Mississippi State is probably very low on the SEC totem pole in terms of NIL money and some things like that. You know, that may or may not point to ability to pay a super competitive salary to an elite baseball coach. But I happen to think that, like, State has been that good in baseball that long. It's put a lot into that ballpark. Baseball is the pride and joy, I think, of that athletic department. My opinion is they will find a way, Graham.
Boy, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
So Mississippi State, NIL wise, like, in everything, I'm like, I don't know this for a fact, but like, to me, the product on the field and everything kind of speaks for itself. They're towards the bottom in the SEC at NIL. That's just all across the board. So to me, like, nowadays when you hire a coach, no matter what the sport is, like, the first or second question is going to be what is the NIL? And if you're Mississippi State, you know, like, what does that look like for baseball? This is the only national championship they have in any of the big three sports. And like, this is realistically their best chance to be competitive nationally among the big three sports. They've done it. Everybody knows their history. They won the Natty, 4 years ago. So, but to me, like, the NILs is like the blinking red light of how good of a job. It's a top 20, top 25 job. A pro for Mississippi State is they're more than likely going to be the only SEC job opening after the season. I mean, unless you guys can think of any. I don't know what the ACC looks like, but you know, that's a very big pro for Mississippi State. You're more than likely going to be the only SEC job open. If Mizzou makes a change, like, State's in a different galaxy than Missouri baseball. But here's what comes with it. So, Chris, you said this the other day when we talked to Ben McDonald. Like, LSU is very similar. These jobs can kind of crush you, like, if you're not ready for it. Like again, whoever the head coach is for football and baseball in the state of Mississippi, you're one of the most recognizable people in the state. Like, everybody knows the head football coach. Everybody knows the baseball coach. Like, not everybody knows the governor, you know, that kind of thing. So, like, if you can handle that, then yeah, this is a job for you. Like, the media responsibilities are way more, especially at Mississippi State, but also, you know, their expectations. I mean, their expectations are super regionals at a minimum. And like, you got to go to Omaha on a consistent basis and like really, really be in the mix.
To be fair, Lemonis was the 11th highest paid coach in all of college baseball. So, and what USA Today reported was more than 400,000 of his $1.33 million a year job comes from the Mississippi State NIL Pact. So
yeah. So
I mean, now they're going to have to pay him $1.25 million through the end of the 2026 season. But if they're going to, if this AD's going to have to money whip somebody.
So a couple things there. So for a good thing for Mississippi State, from my understanding, from what I read, like whatever the next job Lemonis gets, and he's going to get a job like in 5 minutes. Let's be real. So that's going to impact how much money State owes him the rest of the way. So that's good news for Mississippi State. And then like the athletic director, I mean, he's under a lot of pressure too. Like he's one of the youngest ADs in the SEC. He's 39 years old, played football at Wake Forest. This is his first time being an athletic director. He came from Oklahoma. So I kind of think he's going to want to make, a splash. Can he do it? We'll wait and find out. But there's a lot of pressure on him. I mean, when you look at Mississippi State, like athletic department wise, they just go 2-10 in football. Men's basketball hasn't won an NCAA tournament game since George Bush was president. And then, you got the baseball team making a move right now. Soccer had a really good year, but they just lost their coach to Auburn, So it's like State fans are starving for some type of success, and this program is what really matters to a majority of their fan base, the baseball program.
I think you made a fair point about Mississippi State is only going to owe a fraction, whatever Lemonis makes somewhere else. But being around athletics, as long as you and I have been, Chris, the hiring schools know that. And wherever he's going to be fine collecting $1 million from Mississippi State out of spite and taking minimum wage at his next job by comparison in college athletics.
Yeah, coaches are proud. He'll catch on somewhere. He'll be a commodity. I still think he's a Power 5 head coach. I mean, I can't explain why it went wrong the way it did after that national title, but it just did. I wanted to talk about candidates here, guys, and I've divided these, and this is a long list. And what I've done is I've tried not to take anything behind anybody's paywall. Some of this is what's out there publicly, the Clarion Ledger being one place. Some of this is I have a couple of industry sources that gave me names, a lot of which overlapped with what is out there. I'm going to give you 3 pools of candidates. The first one is those with Mississippi State ties. The second one is sitting head coaches without Mississippi State ties. And the third one, it's a short list as I have it so far. It's one name. In fact, it's Josh Elander at Tennessee, the hitting coach. So that one you have. The ones with Mississippi State ties that I've heard mentioned, Georgia hitting coach Will Coggin, who played at Mississippi State. Kentucky coach Nick Mingione and Auburn coach Butch Thompson have both been mentioned. They were both assistants at Mississippi State from 2009 to 2015. Now, I would be very surprised if either of those guys were the next head coach at Mississippi State. From what I know, Mingione has said Kentucky was his dream job. I think that's a great fit. I think Auburn is also a wonderful fit for Butch Thompson, who's been there a while and had some success. Louisiana Tech coach Lane Burroughs is another one. He was a state assistant from 2009 to 2012. Now, here's a list of sitting head coaches without Mississippi State ties. Alabama's Rob Vaughn, East Carolina's Cliff Godwin, Clemson's Eric Bakich, Kansas's Dan Fitzgerald, Duke's Chris Pollard. By the way, had a laugh at the Wikipedia page of Chris Pollard yesterday. It said he's absolutely not going to be the next coach at Mississippi State. So I don't know where that came from, but that gave me a chuckle. But a couple people did mention him to me. Dallas Baptist, Dan Hefner, Wake's Tom Walter, Oklahoma's Skip Johnson, Oregon State's Mitch Carnum, North Carolina's Scott Forbes, Oregon's Scott Wazakowski, and Georgia's Wes Johnson. Actually, he's on the wrong list because Johnson was the pitching coach at Mississippi State in 2016. Guys, of those names, who do we think is realistic? Who might you target?
For me, go ahead.
Well, the one thing I think is, Chris, and you referenced this, but I think Mangione and Butch Thompson had very good days yesterday because they're going to see sizable pay bumps, and they will be in the same zip code next year as they are right now.
I'm hesitant to say an SEC coach, just because I think that's going to be difficult, especially Minchio and Butch Thompson with the situations they're in. The guy I've researched that I've loved head coaching wise is Dan Fitzgerald. Kansas has hit a skyrocketing trajectory with him since he's been there. Does have a little bit of SEC experience in him in 2022. He was coaching at LSU on that staff, and then he left for Kansas for that head coaching job. But guys, Kansas is 35-10 this year, and they had 31 wins a year ago, which was an exceptional season for that baseball program. So if Mississippi State feels like, they want to go after a guy with head coaching experience already under his belt, that could be a very good option for them. Assistant wise, Will Coggin's really good. I think that's a really, really good pick. This is a guy that coached Charlie Condon, who was pretty good a year ago, I'd say, when it came to hitting. Georgia was second in the country last year in home runs, first in the country this year in home runs. The guy can coach an offense really well. So I think that'd be great for Mississippi State to go and nab him. And obviously he played there, right? He played there and was an assistant there. So that would be a really good coming home reunion for that program. And Sam, you said it earlier, you don't believe Elander will go. I don't either, just because Vitello assistants are glued to him a little bit is what I would call it. However, I will say, if Mississippi State wants to keep their recruiting as top notch as it is, Josh Elander's the man for that, because he handles recruiting for Tennessee, and you've seen how good that's been since Tony Vitello has gotten there. So that he wouldn't be my first pick. I'm with you, but if they're going after assistants, he will be on that list and getting a call, I believe.
Well, if I'm Mississippi State, I call everybody. I make everybody tell me no. I mean, what's the worst that could do? They say no. Okay, then you move on to somebody else. What's fascinating to me, baseball more so than any other sport. You see way more assistant coaches get hired to be head coaches. You don't really see that in the SEC in football or men's basketball, but you see it a lot in baseball. And look around the conference, and it's worked out. Like Butch Thompson at Auburn, Wes Johnson at Georgia, Tony Vitello at Tennessee. There is a track record for that. I'm fascinated to see what Mississippi State does. I kind of think they're going to go the route of try to get a Power 4 head coach. If that doesn't work out, try to get an assistant in the SEC. I just kind of think right now, there might be a superstar group of 5 head coach, but I just kind of think that would be hard to sell the Mississippi State fan base right now. And I see G in the chat saying Mississippi State isn't towards the bottom of the NIL. Baseball wise, they're not, but I was talking about athletic department wise, they just are. But yeah, baseball wise, yeah, they're in good shape. I don't have the numbers. I don't have the numbers for everybody, but
nobody has numbers.
Yeah, nobody has a number, but just look who they bring in transfer portal wise and look who they retain. And that will kind of give you an idea. So I just think nowadays, stadium and facilities and all that stuff doesn't matter. Yeah, but not nearly as much as it once did. NIL's the main thing.
I'm curious, and for the group, one, and Graham, you may be able to answer this best, is Mississippi State tied to a guy with Starkville ties? I mean, I used to always call it in Alabama, if a coaching job ever came open, the first question was, did he coach or play for the Bear? I mean,
yeah.
Do they need a Starkville a guy? And the other thing, because Alfred, you're 100% right. Kansas is an eye-popping name among the top 20 this year, and all the credit to Fitzgerald. I'd be a little curious, though, if the Lemonis factor, because wasn't he like a meteoric rise at Indiana over like a 4 or 5 year period and then came to Starkville, and now this is kind of unraveled? I don't know, once bitten, twice shy could possibly be in play there. But the big question is, do you think this is going to have like a Bear Bryant need to tag? Does he have Starkville ties?
I don't think that's like mandatory, but like the state baseball program has such good history that, you just have guys all over the country that have ties to the program just because of how successful they've been over the years. So I don't think it's like the number one top priority. It's just most of these candidates, the way it's checking out, like, yeah, a lot of these really good head coaches or assistant coaches just happen to have ties to Mississippi State.
Yeah, Will Coggin's a big one, right? I mean, I feel like that'd make a lot of Mississippi State fans happy with the roots he has there. So it could be a factor. And again, I think that makes him assistant. If you look at the list of assistants that could go there, that makes him maybe a little bit more higher than an Elander would be on their list. But with the sheer amount of coaches, though, all bets are off. So definitely, I think with the kind of program Mississippi State is, it could definitely play a factor into it.
I think there's a two-part answer to that. I think there's where history might tell us something, and then there's okay, maybe this is different. And the where history tells us something, Graham, you and I were chatting offline, and when the job was open in 2018, their list was Tim Corbin and a couple of Schlossnagel and who
Dan
else?
McDonald.
Yeah, they were aiming very high. That is always going to be State's, I think, historically first instinct. And look, they've been to 12 College World Series. They got a national title this decade. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I mean, you can always ask. You never know. The worst in asking the question is you can get a no, and you're no worse off than you were in the first place. Now I don't think like people's Tony Vitello. I don't think Tony Vitello is leaving Knoxville. That situation is a perfect fit, I think, for his personality and the personality of that fan base. So I don't see that, but that's historically where they have aimed. Now, having said that, John Cohen was the guy that made that hire, right? Or did that last search? Who was a baseball AD, and he knew a lot of people. Yeah. Am I right, Graham? And yeah. Of course, he'd been a coach in the league. He knew a lot of people and was friends with a lot of those coaches. I think he was friends with Corbin and probably those other guys too. So I think that's one thing. Now, that said, you got 39-year-old Zac Selmon, who's in charge now. Everybody handles their business differently. Each AD does it. Some guys are looking to make a splash. Like you got Greg Byrne in Alabama. Like his signature on a coaching search is nobody knows what he's doing, and he's kind of got a guy in mind. He's going to go after it. May not be the guy everybody else wants to go after. Mm-hmm. So with that said, you got an AD under a lot of pressure, and he's not the guy that made the last hire. He may or may not think the way State has thought historically about it. So that's my question is, can we read Zac Selmon's mind and know where this is going to head? I don't know, but historically they have aimed for some of the biggest of the big guys in the industry.
Yeah. And I mean, they've also done the assistant coach route, and it was working, with Andy Canizero. They hired him from LSU. It was working, and then the scandal happened. I'm not going to dive into it. You can Google it. But, they've done that route and it's worked before. So I don't know, like if they do hire an assistant coach in the SEC, like I don't think that's bad by any means, but it's fascinating for a variety of reasons because this is Zac Selmon. He hired Jeff Lebby, and then now almost immediately he's got to hire a baseball head coach. And so like this is a lot pretty early in his tenure.
I think it's important too to look at the money. I mean, there are a lot of guys. I mean, Wes Johnson makes $700,000 a year as reported by Forbes. I mean, he's
more like he's re-signed. So he's over $1 million now.
Okay. Well, this was before the season, and I think it's going to take a annual compensation package that has more than one comma.
Big time.
The guys on the list that I thought were kind of interesting, I think Rob Vaughn is interesting. And I look at, like, State has recruited the JUCO ranks pretty well. I remember Landon Sims when they won the Natty in 2021, debatably the best player on that team, JUCO guy. Rob Vaughn has done a great job of recruiting JUCOs and finding undervalued gems. And I think you're recruiting attractiveness at Mississippi State compared to, it's a higher profile job than Alabama. That's what I'm trying to say. More historical success. At Alabama, baseball is kind of second. Vaughn had some success at Kansas State and what I think Maryland. So that's an interesting one to me because he's been in the league and he's raised the profile and had more success at his recent stops than those schools that had before him. And I thought Skip Johnson was interesting too. Another guy who recruits JUCOs. I think he and Selmon had some overlap at Oklahoma. State's facilities are definitely better than Oklahoma's. So those are two that kind of, in some ways, would make sense for me. You know, it might not be Eric Bakich or a name that, you know, it's at the top of everybody's list, but I think those guys would be really good hires if that's where they look to go.
I totally agree. Yeah, like a lot of these hot boards you see, like one of the first pitchers was Skip Johnson just because of their Oklahoma ties. Just in conversations and listening to people, it seems like the top, I guess, let's say 3 candidates, Duke head coach Chris Pollard. He's in the last year of his deal. I don't know, like, since Duke is a private school, we don't know how much money he makes. I guarantee you State would pay him more than what he's making right now at Duke. He has spent most of his time in that part of the country. He does have a master's degree from Mississippi State, so there is somewhat of a little bit of a tie. That's one to watch. And then Oregon head coach, Chris, you touched on him earlier, Mark Wazakowski. He's kind of bounced around everywhere. Like, he's from LA, head coach at Purdue. He's been at Oregon, back-to-back super regionals at Oregon. So would he be interested, you know, jumping in the SEC waters in a place like Mississippi State? Maybe. Those are the names you hear a lot. And then, you know, Alfred, you touched on Will Coggin. That's a State guy. He's very highly thought of around the SEC and in college baseball wise. So he's been an assistant coach at State and Kentucky. He was at Kentucky, like, right when they started to turn the corner, went to the super regionals. And then, you know, he's now with Wes Johnson. So Wes Johnson and Mingione and Coggin, like, they were all at State together at the same time. So it's like a small world in how this shakes out. So I do think State is definitely going to have some options. Again, that's a good thing for them. And the fact they're the only SEC job that's more than likely going to be open is another good thing.
It also is a unbelievably unique, because Chris, this made me think about it. When you said that Alabama is no better than number 2, it's no better than number 3 with what Nate Oates is doing in basketball there. There are not many baseball jobs, because as great as Schlossnagle's been this year in Austin and as much money as Tony V rightly gets in Knoxville, nobody's ever going to rank baseball ahead of the football programs in either UT. And Mississippi State, as Graham noted earlier, Mississippi State baseball is one of the few baseball programs in this country that can really put a flag on being the flagship athletic program at that university.
Wazakowski and Pollard are good ones too. I think just because they're Pollard's, you know, he's had Duke on the verge of Omaha a lot, and that's a program that's like their next step is to do that. And, you know, he won the ACC tournament there a year ago. Same thing with Wazakowski at Oregon, has them like right there on the verge of Omaha, seemingly, you know, for the past few years now. You got to think maybe with, you know, what Mississippi State can bring in for baseball, that gets him that edge to get to Omaha at a school like that. So those two, you know, come into the wheelhouse of really possible coaching options. Plus, I'm going to stick with this theme for now. I know Mark in our chat said, don't be shocked by an SEC coach. Those two are not in the SEC, and they have an opportunity to come in and coach in the SEC. So that's what makes them stick out to me too, along with a guy like Fitzgerald.
Well, I mean, if they target an SEC head coach, like, who realistically would it be? Like Tony Vitello makes $3 million at Tennessee. That is a lot of money to go all in on baseball if you're Mississippi State. Nick Mingione makes $1.4 million. He just signed a new 5-year deal. That's a lot of money for baseball. And then if you're Butch Thompson, I would definitely ask him and make him say no, but Auburn has made the decision, like, they're pretty invested in college baseball now. And if you're Butch Thompson, like, you're with John Cohen at Auburn, you got the new renovations of the stadium, NIL seems to be in a good place. You can be the guy at Auburn, and you're not going to have nearly as much pressure as you would at Mississippi State. Is that enticing to him, or does he want to jump back in his home state in Mississippi and be the guy in Mississippi State and have the pressure and have all those eyeballs? I don't know. That's something only Butch can answer, but I mean, you at least got to ask him if I'm Zac Selmon.
To me, the most realistic sitting head coach candidates, I think, would be Vaughn and Skip Johnson, because State is a better job than either one of those. The facilities are better. I mean, somebody brought up Dave Van Horn. I really don't know why Dave Van Horn would leave Arkansas at this point. I mean, he's been there 20 years. They're a top 5 program. They're both great jobs, unless you just are crossways with somebody, and you never know. Now, I'll give you one, and this is throwing spaghetti against the wall. I do wonder about Kevin O'Sullivan at Florida. That's a place where baseball is most definitely no better than third in the pecking order, even though you could argue that Florida, since he's been there, has been the best program in the country. The only thing that would really argue against it is they've only got one national title. But, man, his record in the league is super consistent. There's been some talk that he may be close to being done at Florida. I don't know how much of that is true and how much of that is not. But if you want one off the radar, Tim Corbin always gets mentioned at Vanderbilt. State's gone after him a couple of times. He's flirted with a ton of jobs, but has never left. But I think, to me, it would be I would say Vaughn and Skip Johnson would be those two sensible options within the league. And I do wonder, if you make a phone call to Kevin O'Sullivan, what does that look like?
And in the football parlance, when these things happen, we always call it the Jimmy Sexton pay raise that sweeps the league. And Jimmy Sexton is the longtime agent for a lot of SEC football coaches across the South. I think every name we mentioned, with maybe the exception of Corbin, because if he wants to go, he's going to go. But I mean, everybody's going to pick up the phone and at least have a conversation, because it gives the coach leverage.
Mm-hmm.
Money-wise, Vaughn at Bama makes $900,000 and Skip at Oklahoma makes $1 million. So, like, that's to me, that's more doable than $3 million for Tony Vitello or 1.4 for Mingione.
Somebody just dropped Nate Thompson in the chat. He's Arkansas's recruiting coordinator and hitting coach. The hitting coach part of that has been mixed. They've got a lot better this year, but their hitting has come under a lot of criticism in recent years. But the recruiting coordinator part, hey, Arkansas, over this decade is easily a top 5 recruiting. Here's what I'm trying to say. Their recruiting success over the decade would easily be top 5. They've killed it in the portal recently with some good ads. So, at least in terms of the attracting talent and being familiar with the SEC, and I have not seen that one mentioned anywhere until someone dropped it in the chat. That could be interesting.
That's a frustrated Arkansas fan in the chat.
Okay. Trying to get rid of our guy.
Right. It was a pretty polite and kind suggestion there by Big KG. He was being very nice about it. The Kevin O'Sullivan one's interesting, Chris, because I'm sure they'll shoot a call his way. He's been there. I mean, it's kind of like almost Dave Van Horn comparison. I think he took the Florida job when I was like 5. That's how long he's been there. So it's been a while that he's been there. He is most definitely in the millions, right? Getting paid wise. I would be shocked if he's in the hundreds of thousands range at Florida, but it's interesting and it's worth a call. Another one, Brian O'Connor. I think that guy loves and is attached to Virginia, although that season is not going the way it was planned this year. So possibly another one to throw in the mix, but those two are pretty interesting because, I mean, Kevin O'Sullivan and Brian O'Connor rhyme with Omaha with the way they coach their teams year after year.
Sam's asking about the guy at Oregon State. So he's from there. He played there. I mean, can you entice him to leave a place that he loves? I mean, obviously, like, they're not in a conference, and it's really difficult for them to piece together a schedule. So would he want to leave that to go play with the big boys in the SEC? I don't know. Like, only he can make that decision.
Yeah, that one in Oregon too. I mean, now being in the Big Ten and the travel, I just think those West Coast jobs, both of them became much different jobs for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think if it is wise, like if he's their top target, like, I mean, again, he's from LA. He coached at Purdue, and now he's at Eugene. Talk about 3 different places. So the negative, he has 0 SEC experience.
Manuel referenced in the chat, Tadlock from Texas Tech is a great coach, and he is. He's getting paid like a great coach at $1.83 million after their recent success.
Also from Texas and went to Texas Tech. So would he want to leave home?
Someone mentioned Max Wiener as well. He is attached to the hip of Jim Schlossnagle, so that would be very difficult. But shoot a call his way and find out. However, after what happened this past summer with that coaching exchange, it seems like he wants to stay there with them and build something up, especially if they win one national title. Then it'll be like, here comes Texas for the next few years or so.
Mm-hmm.
I would find Brian O'Connor kind of
hard to believe.
He's been at Virginia since 2004.
So I guess, like, for you guys out of the state of Mississippi, not saying that I'm dialed in by any means at Mississippi State. So to me, it's fascinating seeing the reaction for Mississippi State fans. Like, yeah, this was a no-brainer. Like, this had to happen. And then you see, like, the national guys, like what Kyle Peterson put on social media. Like, I don't get it. He just won a national championship. And then you get, like, you know, the 30,000-foot flyover view from the national media guys. Like, where are you guys? I guess, like, are you surprised that they did this? Did you think they needed to do this, since you guys are all out of the state of Mississippi?
My take, anytime something like that happens, like, it is just copy and paste with national media. Oh, this guy won a national title. You know, I'll give you a great example. Kevin Keats at NC State, who was on the hot seat, made a Final Four run. They made the move. Everybody on ESPN was like, oh, Kevin Keats did this. They should have moved on. That is almost always the universal reaction from national media when something like that happens. So I just don't – I'm not saying there aren't good reasons or that they're not sometimes right, but that just to me was the most predictable thing that you could have imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Dan McDonald mentioned too, we talked about they've already gone after him before, right, Graham? Is that a name you said?
There's more to that situation. So Dan and Mike Bianco are really, 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 really close. You know, Dan was at Ole Miss like the first year for Mike Bianco and really was a large part of building the Ole Miss baseball program from the early days. Like, those two have a lot of respect for each other. I mean, it would, like, you know, Dan would make a phone call to Mike, you know, that kind of a thing. Like, hey, what do you think? Like, I just think there's more to that situation, you know, than Dan just leaving Louisville to go to Mississippi State.
Right. Well, and to answer your question real quick, I don't like Kyle Peterson should know this. Mississippi State is like 30 something and 60 something in SEC play since that national title. I got it. They're
42 and 69.
yeah, that's not. I mean, that's not Mississippi State baseball. Anyone would say that, and Kyle Peterson would say that. So, I think that's a real big stickler there, and I get it. That's the hard part about this is, the fact that he did win a national title, but it's like what Randy said. I won't repeat it because that's a little profane, but it was a little bit ago, right? And so since then, you just haven't seen the same success. You've seen one NCAA tournament since then, and I would be really kind of surprised, even with the name on the jersey, that they would get in this year if they continued at the rate they were. So, I think maybe the timing was off a little bit and that sort of thing, but I'm not shocked that a move was made, really.
I will take at least a tangent because first, I always side with the guy whose job it is to hire and fire coaches in the sense that he's going to know whether there's something rotten in Denmark. Conversely, though, and in college sports especially, a big part of the AD role is to keep the money bags happy. Now, sometimes that blows up in your face in Knoxville, Jimmy Haslam, but it is conversely, the only names that, and this is going back, but the only names I could come up with that were fired within 4 years as college coaches of winning a natty were Chiswick, Orgeron, Tarkanian, and Jim Herrick at UCLA. And almost all of those were scandalous programs. I mean, Auburn unraveled with all the Mike Dyer stuff. We know that what was going on in Red Stick had a really bad smell to it. Tarkanian is the caricature of college cheating back when the NCAA gave a damn about it. And Herrick had like his son giving test questions to everybody. So, I mean, I'm not in a million years saying there's something behind the scenes. In terms of the national media, it's just an easy stance. I mean, Chris is right on the copy and paste. It's just easy to say, oh, Mississippi State, y'all won a natty. Well, you know what? This is more than ever, especially in college sports where scholarships are year-to-year propositions. This is the Janet Jackson world of what have you done for me lately?
And by the way, that's a good point, Eli. For Lemonis, like I do think State fans like they very much appreciate everything that he did and being the first guy to win a national championship in any of the big three sports. Obviously, it's going to hurt right now for Lemonis, but this will be one of those situations like down the road, they'll bring him back for a big alumni weekend and, he'll get a big round of applause and all that. Like,
yeah,
no issues, never a scandal, anything like that at all with him and the program that he ran.
Yeah, the difference is obviously Cal had a much higher floor when he wasn't winning the whole thing. I mean, I never in a million years, and you guys kind of know my style on this. I will bring up things off the radar because sometimes that happens. Like nobody would have ever said the year after they won a national title, they went 8-22 in the league,
9.
and then struggled 9. What I mean, like that, I wouldn't have even entertain that remotely as a possibility.
Yeah.
At the time.
Everybody thought, okay, they're about to take off. Like
yes.
They got their guy. He's relatively young. People like him. Like everybody was like, they're about to go to the moon here. I do think a big difference now for Mississippi State is just how many more universities care about baseball in the SEC. It used to be half. Now you're looking at almost the whole conference.
Thank you, Big KG, for being so helpful as a Good Samaritan Arkansas fan. He says, just hire Justin Parker, lock in a pitching coach, and go get sluggers. If only it was that simple. If only it was that simple. Yeah, the one thing Eli said is really, I think, on point from an outsider view. Expectations to me seem like everything he said, host in Starkville pretty much every year, and get at least close to Omaha, if not make it. So, and you hadn't seen that since the national championship. I mean, they didn't even host when they made the tournament. They had to go to Charlottesville, which is a nightmare, right? In the NCAA tournament when you have to go out there. So that's the biggest thing that hits the nail on the head.
And Cooper Jones, State was a top 5 job from 2016 to 2021. Now it's a top 15 job. I mean, I kind of think it's around the 20 mark, but can it be like State can be a top 5 job? Like it really can. They have that ability to go all in on the sport. Can they get there? We'll see. But they've fallen from the mountaintop to where they are right now. That stadium, the facilities, like there's way too much money being spent and invested in the baseball program to have the results that they've gotten. Like to not make the tournament for 2 years in a row. So like a lot of people forget. So State gave Lemonis like a lot of opportunities. He fired his pitching coach in the middle of the season 2 years ago. That was Scott Foxhall, who's at Auburn now. And then so they were like, okay, we'll let you bring in your new guy. So he brings in Parker. Last year was year 1, and they make a regional final. And then we see the results, obviously, this year. So, like, he's had his chances, you know. So it's like when the national media makes statements like, oh, how could they do it? I mean, it's like, you know, State's giving him opportunities for sure. And there's too much money invested for the results like this, because like baseball is it's huge for the towns and communities of Starkville, Oxford, Hattiesburg. Look at attendance in college baseball. All 3 of the Mississippi schools are in the top 15. And like those towns make a lot of money on big weekends. Like this weekend in Starkville, it's Super Bulldog weekend. They're home for baseball, softball, and they got a dachshund race where everybody from around the world goes to the Cotton District and they race dachshunds. So it's a big weekend this weekend in Starkville.
I'm always kind of entertained. Go ahead, Alfred.
I was going to say Egg Bowl, then that. That's the order in Starkville, Mississippi.
Hey, I went to the dachshund race last year. It's pretty legit. Like I had my wife and we had a good time.
I think I'm going to need footage. I'm always the idea of, okay, this is the top X job to me is always kind of interesting, right? Because Tennessee wouldn't have been a top 50 job when Tony Vitello took it. You know, if Tennessee opened today, would it be a top 5 job? I don't know.
No.
You know, is Vanderbilt a top 5 job, or is that just Tim Corbin? I think it's the latter. And you can go on and on. I think sometimes we very much underestimate the possibility of what a job can be with the right guy. We've seen it time. I mean, who was thinking about Gonzaga basketball 25 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Gonzaga's probably a top 10 program in the country year in and year out, maybe top 5. My point is, I think sometimes that gets overrated. And I'll give you the other side of it too. Indiana basketball. Anytime Indiana opens, that place thinks it is going to go get, 45-year-old Bobby Knight reincarnated and get back to the top of the mountain. And yet that's never come close to happening other than the one run they went on, 25 years ago where they made the title game. So I don't know. I very much question our ability to quantify. I guess you can look at it with resources and facilities and things, and that's a good barometer. But now with the new landscape of college sports, it becomes, to me, harder to quantify.
Well, I think in some ways, especially until we know what the NIL, these programs are dealing with, then it's going to become easier to quantify, because what's in the rafters, Bobby Knight can't coach. The 1980s Bobby Knight would be hit with so many Title IX lawsuits these days, he wouldn't last 9 months. Never mind make a run at 9 national championships or whatever, how many ever title games he played in. And so you're 100% right about how Tony V has transformed. But that, not only is he very good at what he does, that was the landing spot that he got on a rocket ready to explode, because Tennessee jumped in with both feet in the NIL collective. And we're starting to see that with the softball teams atop the national rankings. The basketball team was top 5. The football team was in the playoff. And Tony V's got he's a reigning national champ. So I don't know if the prism that we've always looked at top 5 jobs whether it's harder or going to be easier to quantify, but I think the prism has directly changed to money.
By the way, Eli makes a great point, and I didn't get to how I would do it, but what he says on the screen is exactly how I think I would quantify it. He says, I think when you look at other programs, and I'm doing this for the benefit of our audio audience that can't see this, look at the place without a coach. State has capabilities that other places don't. Prime example is 3 straight Omaha trips with 3 different head coaches. And that's why ultimately I do think this is a great job. Is it top 5, top 10, top 15, top 20? I don't know. And I don't think we have time to make the conversation today. But there's no reason it couldn't be top 5 again with the right guy. And personality, I think, is a thing too. Like, I'll give you an example. When Dusty May was on the market in basketball last year, and a lot of people had circled him as Indiana, he came pretty close to taking the Vandy job, because that was a little bit more – it was a place that he thought he could win without the crazy expectations that if you're not, going to a Final Four every other year, you're on the hot seat or winning a conference title. Some coaches like that. Everybody's different. Some coaches are the James Franklin type, where they want the biggest and the best, and if the job's number 1 in the country, they don't care if the pressure is 50 times where they were. They've got the kind of ego that they think they can win. And to me, State probably – I think the fact that baseball, in my mind, is the flagship – I mean, let's be honest. Football is the flagship program anywhere in the SEC. Even like a Vanderbilt, football is still king. But I think baseball is probably as close to the top of the mountain. Well, throw Kentucky basketball out, right? But I think baseball is as close to the top of the mountain year in and year out for an SEC school as any other place. And to me, that's the thing you get. You've got to go find a guy who is ready for the heat that comes with the job and the expectation that, I don't care if you won a national title 2 years ago. Don't be bad the next 2 years. And to me, it's who's got the personality to deal with some of that.
Sven, I see your comment. The first one, a call will be made, or calls, plural, will be made to Athens, Georgia for one of 2 guys there.
Yeah. Chris, have you ever seen on a hot board where you have the head coach and then like one of his assistants up for the same job? I've never seen that ever for any sport.
No, I don't think I have. But it makes sense in this case, right?
It does. And I mean, again, Jay said it earlier. You're going to see a lot of these coaches have leverage now. So, like, if they're happy where they are, but if they want a little bit more NIL, facilities, whatever, you better believe they're going to use this to their advantage.
Have we just about talked ourselves out of this?
I think so. I think we need to wait for a decision at this point.
Well, I think like it won't happen for a while unless they go the assistant coach route, then it'll happen faster. But I mean, think about it. If you want a good coach, more than likely, let's say they make it in the super regionals, you're going to be waiting around for a few weeks.
Right.
Well, and here's the other thing too, guys. We've mentioned a lot of guys within the league. I could see Alabama hosting. And Alabama, if Justin LeBron gets better, and Riley Quick hits a heater, crazier stuff has happened than Alabama making to Omaha. You've had, we talked about Wes Johnson. Georgia could easily go to Omaha, especially if it's a national seed. I don't know where, if Kevin O'Sullivan were to be a factor, you cannot discount anything Florida could do after last year. We're seeing Florida surging. I mean, that's at least 3 guys right there that are sitting head coaches in the league that have a chance to play deep into the postseason. Now, I don't know where this is on the radar of concern for Greg Sankey. I'm going to guess it's pretty low because from what I understand right now, the league is just so much is tied up in terms of mind power with the changing landscape of NIL and the House settlement and all those things that it's dominating the conversation in the SEC offices. But I'll tell you what you don't want, and I get that it was different because the Texas A&M rivalry and that dynamic there. I mean, we could play college baseball another 1,000 years and never see one play out with all those variables again. But I do think if you are the SEC, it is probably not in your best interest to have anything along the lines of what we saw last year, especially with recruiting timelines and portal and all that. So that is a little bit of an interesting thing is you could have some guys involved within the league as head coaches of the places where you run it's a delicate situation we saw play out a year ago.
Yeah, and this situation is different than the Texas A&M. Like somebody said that in the chat a moment ago. It just is. Like this is apples and oranges.
Yeah, that's just a wild scenario that, like you said, Chris, we might not ever see again. Cooper with a good suggestion. Graham, you would be in on this one. Chris Ostrander down at Southern Miss. Good program, yes. I will say that. Very good baseball program. And, I mean, guys, that's we talk about the levels of sports there. Baseball might be top. I know football is just big everywhere in Mississippi, but, I mean, that Southern Miss hosted a super regional not too long ago.
Yeah, who beat them?
Tennessee.
It was Ole Miss.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. But yeah, Oz. So he's known for pitching. He was the longtime pitching coach there, and then got the head coaching job. Like, yeah, he's very, very good. Again, just for him, only like he can answer this question. Like, what does he want? Would he want to jump in those waters and have all that pressure? Then go for it. I mean, like that would be a step up. But also, like, I don't know, would state fans be excited about that, or would they look at it like LSU football? Like, we don't want Billy Napier. We don't want the Sun Belt coach from down the road. You know, I don't know how state fans would view that, but he is a very, very good coach.
And I also think as circling back to something we talked about earlier, a 39-year-old AD I would have to think he feels like this needs to be kind of a splash hire that catches a few headlines and opens some people's eyes.
All right, quick 20-second parting thoughts. We'll go clockwise, starting with me. I think this is a good job. I'm very interested to see who state can hire. I think there will be no shortage of good candidates. It's just about finding the right one. Does not matter if you got a list of 10 guys and 9 of them reject you, as long as you find the right guy to take the job. And I think state will.
Yeah, I agree with that. And with Eli Wilson in the chat, he said the fan base is awake now. So find the right person, and state is going to be all in baseball. And I mean, I agree with the move and certainly understand why they made the change, and just buckle up if you're a Mississippi State fan, because I'm sure everybody's on the edge of the seat to see what they do. Do they go the assistant coach route or try to go, big name hunting? So we'll find out here in the next few weeks.
I'd say Mississippi State fans, let us know if you'd rather have a guy who's connected to the program or one outside, what you would be okay with. I think that'll play a big part in this. Of course, with a young AD, that can go a multitude of ways, depending on whether or not he wants to play into what the fan base wants, that sort of thing. But I mean, this job is top notch. We can rank it wherever you guys want to rank it. It's top notch in college baseball. It's nothing short of that. So they're going to make a really good hire, and they're going to make a lot of phone calls that should turn some head coaches and assistant coaches' head. So excited to see how this turns out.
I think it will be a splash hire. If I had to put betting odds on it, I'm starting in Athens with Wes and then going down from there. And the one thing, Chris, you're 100% right about fit, but you also, a job of this high profile, you're going to have to operate covertly, because what you don't want to do is turn this into a circus where it gets reported 6, 7, 8 guys have said thanks but no, because that will ding the perception of this program mightily, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you for watching. Good to have a lot of our state audience back. Sven, Eli, missed you guys. Thanks for joining in. Be sure to subscribe, catch us on all our other platforms, and follow our social media accounts. For Graham Doty, Alfred Esmond, Jay Greason, I'm Chris Lee. God bless you. Have a great day. Thanks for watching us here at Southeastern 16.